Welcome, it's Debrup on Air. I'm your host Debrup Laha, and this is The International Lens, where we dive into the real life stories of international students in the US. I have been in your shoes, earning both my bachelor's and master's degrees here, and now I'm working full time in the States. This podcast series is for you, whether you're already studying in the US or just planning to. Every week, I'll bring you conversations with students from all over the world, sharing their journeys, challenges, and triumphs. My mission? It's to give you the insights and inspirations you need as you carve your own path in the US. So, whether you're dreaming of studying here or already on your journey, this podcast is your ultimate guide. Tune in and let's make your American adventure one to remember. Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of the International Lens. Over the past few weeks, we have had the chance to hear from students and recent graduates across various fields. But today, we are joined by a truly inspiring guest, a wonderful orator, a mentor, and my current mentor as well, and who's also an adjunct faculty at the Hilbert College in upstate New York and is helping enrich the young minds of the modern day. We have Miss Rituparna Paul. Ritu, thank you so much for taking the time today out of your busy schedule. I know you're
Yes,
a faculty, you have a lot of responsibilities, but thank you so much for taking the time. How are you?
yes. I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for asking.
And how's the weather there? You're in upstate New York, right? Pretty
Yes,
cold
I'm in
today?
Buffalo, and Buffalo, the weather currently is very sunny, but it was not as sunny over the last couple of days. I think it was very cloudy, but we woke up to a wonderful day today.
Right. So wonderful day, and we want to enrich everybody who's going to be listening to this episode with your ideas and about your history. So tell us a little bit about your background and your educational qualifications.
Okay, so I completed all my education in India, in Kolkata specifically. So I completed my bachelor's in English literature from Women's Christian College, and then I completed my master's from Calcutta University. So I had my master's in linguistics, which is, of course, a very different field than English literature. And
Mhm.
right after completing my master's, I was very confused as to what to do. But thankfully, I got my first internship at Indian Statistical Institute under the tutelage of Dr. Niladri Shekhar Dash, and I worked in the linguistic research unit for a while. I was a project assistant over there for over 2 years, working on sentiment analysis. And eventually, I moved on to a language data science company where I was a language coordinator and a project coordinator at the same time before I shifted and came here to the US.
Interesting. So whenever we think of the Indian Statistical Institute, the only thing that comes to our mind is math and stats. Didn't
Okay.
know there could be a role for in the field of linguistics there. And then you said you worked in the data science sector as
Yes,
well.
yes.
Wow. So totally in the
This,
world of tech, but
yeah,
you're in linguistics. Interesting. So what made you move to the US? Because you had a well-paid job in India. What
absolutely.
motivated you to come here?
What motivated me? I'll real talk. I got married and I wanted to come here. And I wanted to come here and be here and support my husband who was completing his PhD.
Okay.
And he was in his final years. So I wanted to come in here and support him and make his life a little comfortable. So I think that was a interesting choice where I completely shifted my life and came here to the US, not knowing what life would, take me to places or where I would go. But yeah, that was my first main important reason why I came here.
Interesting. So you're a true backbone of both of your success because often one needs to take a step back to sacrifice a little bit,
Yeah,
but I'm pretty sure you both are doing great. So firstly, hats off to you for that taking that step because not a lot of people have that courage to take that step at the first place.
yes. It is very daunting, I must say, because when you choose something like I had a very stable life in India, not just for work, but I also had my entire range of family, friends, my entire support system back in India. Not just that, apart from teaching and working in corporate, I used to teach at least tons of kids. I think I used to teach high school and college first years back in my country. So when I was coming here, I still had 15 kids that I was teaching, so I had to leave all of that and come to the US. It was very daunting, very challenging for sure, but what is life without challenges and little surprise?
Absolutely. And it must be difficult for the students as well, right? Because they let go of such a wonderful mentor at the first
I'm
place.
still in touch with them. Thankfully, all my students, everyone, I'm still in touch with them. I still mentor them. They reach out to me on every occasion, even if they are completing their masters or deciding to pursue a PhD right now. Whatever they're trying to do, I am always in touch with all my kids, and I think that's my happy place too.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, you're doing a great job. That's all I can say.
Thank you.
And since your educational background was all from India, how difficult was the job hunting phase here, especially when you were competing with people who hold a degree from a US institution?
Right. I must say this. Even when I was looking for jobs here, one thing that really pushed me was learning about the structure of modules, the system, the curriculum that works in the US. When I was starting to find jobs here, prior to that, during COVID time, I must also mention this. I was teaching IELTS and TOEFL for students online. It was an online program, and I was teaching. Eventually, I got a job, which was an online job during COVID. This was, you can say, it was a boon for me as well. I had a lot of online teaching experience, and when I got into the online teaching, I was approached by a university called Southern New Hampshire University, and they also had a range of universities that needed professors to teach online. So it was the US curriculum for Indian students. The program was set as such that you will get a US degree, but you are sitting at the comfort of your home.
Okay.
So I was approached by Avenue, one of those companies, and they wanted to train me and help me learn about the US curriculum and how it goes. So I got an entire training of how the US curriculum looks like, the structure, the cohesiveness, the entire the module system, the works, the grading system, the rubric system that they follow meticulously. So I got trained by them for at least a month, and then I taught for three separate universities online. That was St. Leo University, Tiffin University, and Southern New Hampshire University. I taught for 11 terms. And once you get to know how the US curriculum works, it
Mhm.
sort of was very difficult for me to unlearn and learn the new structure of the US curriculum. And I think everybody should know this, that the Indian structure of education, which is very theoretical, is very different to the practical aspects of the US curriculum that we have, right? So transitioning from that, from learning something very different, learning something that was completely opposite to what I have learned back in India, was a bit challenging, but the people who were there to guide me throughout learning the LMS, for example, the learning management system for each of the universities were very different. We worked with D2L, Brightspace, we worked with Moodle. So currently I'm working with Blackboard, which is another LMS for the current college that I'm teaching. So you have to learn all of these details. And once you know, you just have to be very methodical in your approach. And I think that's what helped me to move across and just be confident in what I'm doing.
Interesting. You mentioned about the practical aspect, and I can relate that when I had come to the US for my studies, we realized that the education system is totally different here. It's less theoretical and more practical work. And I'm glad to hear that it's also the same in the art fields as well. It's not
Yes,
just in science and technology.
right.
And you mentioned that the school or the universities where you were affiliated to, they also provide distance learning program for students back home, right?
Yes, they do. So you get the US degree, and it's like a comprehensive 8-week programs that I taught. So
Mhm.
you, it was there were students from many different backgrounds, but English 101. So I will mention the subjects that I taught. It was English 101 and 102. That was for basic learning how to write, and moving on to composition writing first, like learning different ways of writing informative letters, narrative writing, descriptive writing, different kinds of paragraphs, different kinds of essays. Then I also taught English 121, which was academic writing, understanding rhetorics, which is like, uh, situational, circumstantial based writing, which requires you, if you're writing to a professor, if you're writing for your research paper, if you're writing a letter to a friend, if you're writing a letter in your vlog, whenever some sort of entry is given into separate categories, the constant communication eventually changes. So you have to, tone down and tailor your word choice, your vocabulary, the sentence structures, for example, everything changes. So I taught that as well. And currently, I'm teaching the public speaking course, which allows my students to come up and just get over their stage fright and speak their mind. So,
Interesting. You mentioned that. It reminds me of my freshman year at University at Buffalo, where I had to take an English course. And I remember in the second week, I had to write an essay which was about comparing a contrasting essay of a song by Taylor Swift. I think it was "We Are Never Getting Back Together" versus
yes.
Adele's "Skyfall." And I had to listen to those songs probably 5 times to understand what exactly were those. And it was a totally different experience coming from India because we don't get to learn this back home. I mean, it was totally different educational system.
I have to do
So,
the same here. I think one thing, since I am talking about like how, your education back home can also help here, I would definitely want everyone to
mhm,
not just learn about their studies. You can study everything that your subject entails, right? But you also have to be very much aware of the pop culture. I mean, especially if you're, aspiring student in this country, learn about the pop culture, learn about who is currently, topping the charts, learn about what is the latest TikTok trend. I mean, I know that this is very funny when I say this as a professor, that you should learn about TikTok, you can learn about Instagram, learn about how your hashtags work.
mhm,
Also, I'm a student of linguistics, I know how this works, but it is important for the students to be very much aware of what is happening around the world. Politics for sure, music for sure, books that are in trend right now, what kind of music the people are listening to, who won the Grammys, who won the Oscars, what are the movies people are talking about. Why are these important in the context of an American education system, not just for Indians, but overall? It's because it gives you conversational pieces to connect with people in the class. So if you are connecting, for me, I'm a millennial, right? I'm a 35-year-old, but I have kids who are 18, 19, and 20. So I have to relate myself to them. It is a tough job, I must say. Sometimes I feel like I am talking about things they cannot relate to, but I also have to involve a lot of music in my classes. I do that. I give examples of music, I give examples of movies, I talk about books that have inspired me, and I tell them to read those books. What it does, and if they know it, they are immediately hooked into, right? They are
mhm.
the conversation, and we can have a verbatim where we are sharing our ideas and opinions and everything. So Indian students, if they are well versed with the this part of the this part of the country, especially when it comes to music. I mean, we grew up with all of those eventually. But as you said, you put a wonderful example of comparing Adele and Taylor Swift, completely different genres of music, different voice range, different crowd appeal, I must say. But still, you need to know both of them, which requires you to listen to both of them. You can have your favorite, singer or favorite director, favorite author, but those are unique to you. Keep those unique to you, but also learn about the other things that may not appeal to you all the time. It's just good to have that knowledge base, because if you are in a group, especially for Indian kids, when they come to America, they have to learn to relate to the culture, right? Which can get very difficult. I think it's very challenging for me. And we
Mhm.
often talk about the culture clash that we often have. So it's better to learn about a few things. And trust me, I mean, even if you're very stubborn and obstinate in the first few
Mhm.
months, once you get into it, you never know. Life will surprise you. You will find things that interests you, and you will go from there.
Right. So English is not just about the GRE words, right? It has a lot more than that. And knowledge of the current affairs is definitely very important to cope up with what's happening around and to have a conversation at the first place. Because oftentimes we realize that when we go to events, not we just don't talk about work and our life. We talk about different things happening. And in order to start a conversation, it's important to have a thorough knowledge of those. So it's
Yes.
a good point that you mentioned because people who are coming from abroad,
Mhm.
they often don't realize that. And I myself didn't realize that at the first place. And in my first semester, I was like, why are they asking me to compare two songs? What am I going to do in engineering with it? Okay, cool. Thanks for this wonderful advice for the students.
Yes.
Now, coming to your role, uh,
Mhm.
what do you think are some important skills for people like you or people who are on the same boat as you who are trying to land faculty roles in the US? Any special skills you can tell of?
One special skill that I believe that like, kind of catapulted me from teaching online into an in-person role was being very vocal about my confidence. I think that really helped. I remember for faculty roles, you have to showcase that you want to inspire, kids, college kids who want. So my students, they have subjects such as criminal justice, accounting, maths, for example. And I remember when I walked into the classroom, the first thing I asked my students is, why have you taken this course? Most of the answers, 80% answers are because I'm supposed to take it. It's like I have to take it. I cannot let go. This has to be in my curriculum. You have to convert that into something that they will be attending your class every day for. As educators, especially as faculty, you are in the business of inspiration. I mean, young kids, they're just getting out into the world. You have to inspire them. So as a faculty, I think that enthusiasm should be there. When you're sitting for your interviews, you have to let the people know how you want your classroom to be and how you want to inspire and educate the children in the classroom. So feel free to have your entire teaching philosophy ready. I think I had an entire page of teaching philosophy where I had to write down everything that I believe in, that I would be like transferring. So, as an educator, from an educator point of view, you're supposed to throw in messages, and it's for the receivers outside who are going to pick it up. And I am proud to say that none of my students miss my classes. They love being in my classes, not just because I teach them something, but also they learn about how to deal on a day-to-day basis, conversations on a day-to-day basis. And I mean, I think that education is not just for teaching kids, but also for inspiring them. Once you inspire the kids and you showcase that enthusiasm and your thought process in an interview, faculty jobs get easier. For me, I believe I had to, when I was teaching online teaching was very different. Most of the time you have a Zoom session and there are students. I had to keep them on their toes, which means I would stop the class, the conversation, and pick up any one of the kids and say, so, what do you think about this? They have to be attentive. So you have to have this tiny tips and tricks that can help the students to stay engaged with you. Don't digress from the topic is something I also say during interviews. So for faculty jobs, that is my most important thing is stay very confident, have a very strong teaching philosophy. The subject that you teach, the knowledge is already there. You have the syllabus ready. You have the curriculum very beautifully set, methodically constructed for day to day, week for week. I have my entire syllabus done. Also, I work on those, but I also utilize that information that I gain from outside world into my classroom presentations. That helps. Another thing is when you are sitting for the interview, they might ask you for a demo. Now, what is a demo? A demo is they might ask you to come into a classroom and just take over the class. You know what I mean? So, based on the subject that you're teaching, they might ask you and say, hey, so how would you tackle this particular class? How would you start? Or how would you engage the students in a way where they want to put down their phone and just listen to you? So, you have to come up with interesting ideas and techniques. Um, I remember when I got the call for Hilbert. So, mind you, I do not have a previous experience of teaching in person in a US college. I do not have that. In person experiences are very different. The program I was doing was US curriculum for Indian students. I already know Indian students, so that was not a challenge there. But I remember when I first walked into a classroom where I had only American students, I was very nervous and very scared. However, once you start looking at it from a point that kids are kids, students are students, and students are same everywhere. It is true. You would think that American students, they are very different than Indian students. No. But yes, they follow a particular pattern. That means you have to make sure your grades are very clear. Again, when they ask you for faculty jobs, they will ask you to kind of create a syllabus for your classroom for a 15-week in-person course. You need to know what exactly you are speaking in the classroom. Students do not like being confused. They do not like being confused about when is the assignment due, what are the grades for, what am I going to write, and what is the rubric. You have to explain these things very clearly in the classroom, and then it gets easier. So my in-person classroom courses it was a challenge to get it first. I applied to many colleges. I got calls, 3 or 4 interview calls, but I remember this Hilbert College, they sent me a mail letting me know that I do not have in-person experience, how I would take that role. So I remember I was a little robust and very aggressive. You can say, and aggressive writing actually helps. This is another thing for Indian students. Do not shy away, be very confident and own up to what your words are. So your words are going to take you to places, right? So I remember I wrote a very strong, aggressive email letting them know that I have taught 11 terms and I do not question my capability as a professor to own the classroom. And I think that landed me the role where I had an interview. So I had the online interview again, and then they called me to their classroom and wanted to have a conversation with me face to face to see how I speak. Again, my native tongue is Bengali. I do not have an accent, which sometimes can be very difficult, but be authentic. I think the students here, they like if you're authentic more than if you're trying to bring in accent. So don't do that. Stick to your own accent. And yeah, I think that's how I got the faculty role, even without having a degree, and it helped. Degree in the US, I must say. Of course, I have other educational background. Yeah.
Of course, a degree in the US is not mandatory. And I
No.
really like the fact that you mentioned that you are aggressive and you are confident in your approach when you are looking for this faculty role, because oftentimes, yes, not having a degree in the US institution can hurt to some extent, but I'm glad that it worked out in your favor, and it should be a motivation for others who are on the same boat as you.
Right, absolutely. I think students should know this. Your education that you have from India, it's very valuable. You know, you and every tiny step that you have done in your education or in your workplace, it will never go unnoticed.
Right.
Even if you have learned to, for example, write music, if you have, the understanding of writing letters, if you have an understanding of writing drama, for example, scripts, everything will work out in your favor in some capacity. I would have never known that me teaching high school kids would take me to a place where I can stand in a classroom of like 25 kids, of American kids, of course, very different than my culture, and I would still be able to train them and be a professor here. So never not acknowledge your tiny achievements in your home country. Of course, you will always grow and evolve into a better, bigger, more successful person, but never think that whatever you're doing right now, it's less.
Great. I mean, I like your confidence. I hope people can be confident as you are, because I'm not myself not that confident when I'm
My
speaking in
days.
public. But definitely, I mean, you're a great inspiration, and I'm pretty sure the prospective faculties in the US who are applying from different countries will get great inspiration from you. So, coming to your current program at Hilbert College, what are the courses are you teaching? Are you still teaching English 101?
Yes, and I started off because that was my fresher course, and once I started off with I think I taught in the fall term last
Mhm.
year, and then I asked them if they have other opportunities where I can pursue. So I had a review of my classroom. So what they do, the department chair, she comes in and she sits in your classroom and she rates your entire classroom, your ability to teach basically. Thankfully, all my kids were so nice; they never looked at their phones. I had trained them beforehand. They did not look at their phones. I have a standing instruction not to look at their phones, and they kind of sat and had a conversation. So I placed a debate and I broke the teams down, and they have wonderful debate. So from there, I think the chairman felt that I would be a good fit for public speaking courses. So eventually, she moved me into public speaking courses where I teach 2 classes currently. So I taught English 101, and this is their Blueprint BLU 151 course that I teach right now, which is for public speaking.
I
Yeah.
think you should be my mentor as well when it comes to public speaking, and to just help us get that confidence, because
I
you're
think,
really.
I think I would definitely say I have my doubts as well. I had very, sad days as well where I was doubting myself when I got rejections. You
Mhm.
will get rejections. You are in the place where you will find beautifully written, very well constructed emails telling you that we like you, but you're not fit for the job. I have had my days. Don't be sad because you're getting rejections. Just know you will be getting somewhere. It's just a matter of few days. So we all have ourselves, but talk to yourself in the mirror. I will definitely say this. One of the biggest skills that I have learned as a public speaking, like the strategies that I completely use, and I tell my kids also, a lot of my students, American students, they know English, right? It's not about learning English. It's about the way you're presenting yourself in the classroom, be it a presentation or just
Mhm.
standing at the podium using a certain body language to communicate, right? They also have stage fright. You would think we Indians have stage fright because of a foreign language. No, American kids also have stage fright. One thing that helps them is to talk to the mirror. I know it's pretty weird. Sometimes it can feel like, why am I talking to myself? But trust me, the more you talk to yourself in the mirror and you see how you look, you will get more confident in speaking in front of the public. Forget if people are judging you. I always say this, when you are speaking, you are the king and the people have to listen. So once you own that up and you are Superman in the classroom, you can do wonders. And I think every time my students come in, and I have presentations every week for my kids, and they just come in, and even if they're not prepared, even if they use humor to connect with the crowd, it's wonderful, right? You break the ice and you start speaking. So that's one takeaway. Talk to yourself in the mirror a lot more. It's not crazy.
I tell the same to my mentees about talking yourself in the mirror because it also helps you prepare for interviews. Because oftentimes you go to job fairs and you need to directly give your 90-second elevator pitch. And if
Yeah.
you're not confident and if you don't know what you're speaking about, that might not land you a job in the future. So, talking to the mirror or to yourself, looking at the mirror is definitely an important skill for all majors, irrespective of whether you're doing science, tech, or even English. So, thanks for this great pointer. And as a faculty,
Mhm.
once you're teaching a course, what gives you the greatest joy? Like any unique experience that you'd like to share?
Unique experiences. Okay, so a lot of my students, for writing especially, I remember I had a narrative writing technique, a narrative writing essay that my kids gave as an assignment, and I checked it. They talked about so many different things. They talked about their experiences in the hurricane in Florida. One of them was stranded there, and he described his, experience. A lot of students, I believe, there are so many different, beautiful, surprising elements in my classroom that happens every single time. But every time they are unique to themselves
Mhm.
is the time I have the greatest joy, because when you tell them. So, for example, if I tell in my classroom, I think recently they have a narrative speech that they have to kind of share with the classroom without a presentation. Presentations always help. Um, but when they come and stand in front of the classroom and describe their unique experiences, I think that's one of my greatest joy. Another topic I remember that stuck with me, and I remember taking pictures of it, of everyone's slide, was I had a question which said that procrastination, it is, how difficult it is to get over procrastination and the scientific ways to overcome procrastination. Each one of my kids, I give a list of 5 topics every single time for them to kind of like choose, because you need to give them an option. Every one of them, to my surprise, every one of them chose that particular topic, and they give wonderful presentations. One of my good students, he's a wonderful guy, he came up and said, "So, how many of you started the presentation yesterday night? You know, creating the presentation?" And half of my class raised their hands up. And then he said, "Well, to put things in perspective, I started my presentation at 10:30 p.m. last night. And and he was supposed to present today, I mean, the next day at 8 a.m. in the morning."
Yeah.
He started with that humor, and the entire class was laughing. And I think the confidence with which he was not scared, right? He wanted to give a very real picture of how procrastination works. And then they gave like all the different ways to overcome them. And some of them also ended it with like, "See, we know everything in theory, but the practice of it is very difficult." So I think those few moments, I believe it's wonderful. Also, when I have debates in the classroom, whether college education should be important or whether it should not be important, the students in my classroom, the debates that happen in my classroom, they are so wonderful. And I think I always want to like record each time I walk into the classroom, because it's so much fun.
Do you feel a college education is important? What's your thought?
I believe for Indians, if we have not had a college education ever, our parents would have thrown us out. That's a given. But here, most of my kids, they believe college education is not as important, because for one of the students, he started the debate with this particular line: "How would you feel as a 22-year-old you have a $50,000 debt when you're getting into the real world. And
Right.
that's how it started. And when he did that, I kid you not, I had chills because it's so true. So I think it's all about perspective. The American kids here, they have a very different idea of education. And we as Indians, we value education. Not that they don't. They actually are more practical in their aspects. They're already living alone, away from their parents. So it's just the perspective that matters.
Yep. I mean, as Indians coming from India, if we don't get at least a master's, or even if you complete a master's, the next question is, are you going for a PhD?
Yeah.
After finishing a PhD, are you going for a postdoc? So this conversation continues. So I understand what you said, the different perspectives that we have from the Western world versus back in India.
Yeah.
So yeah, so since we are coming towards the end, I have a couple of questions for you. So we often hear that for STEM professionals, the faculties or the professors advise that students should sometimes improve their math skills to some extent and technical writing skills. What suggestions would you give for an international student who's coming to study English in the US?
To study English in the US,
Yep.
the biggest takeaways from my learning has been you do not have to be Shashi Tharoor. You do not have to memorize all the GRE words and try to incorporate every single word in your paragraphs, in your essays.
Mm-hmm.
Use good words, impactful words sparingly. Think about it as the mutton in the biryani that you have. You don't If you put mutton all the time, it won't be as great. It won't be the biryani that we crave for. So when you're writing an essay, focus on impactful words. Don't focus on tons of words that are very hard to hear. Use good words sparingly. Maintain a structure in your writing. Your introduction, your body, your conclusion should be very clearly laid out. Use a lot of transitional and cohesive devices. So that means if you're writing an introduction and you want to move on to the first paragraph, and from there, from one point, you're moving to the next paragraph. Try to use cohesive devices such as however, furthermore, consequently. So when I read your essay, it should look like you have given a lot of thought, not just in the content, but in the structuring and the layering out of your entire essay. Another thing for English students that I would say is learn to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Your credibility does not just lie in the way how great you write, but at the same time, the great way you present yourself. So learn to speak as much as you can. Be very confident, own up to anything and everything that you know, and take a deep, deep interest in learning about the current affairs. For English, that is my biggest takeaway. Read a lot of books as well. The more you read, I always say nowadays, in the era of instant gratification and just reels for 20 seconds that you probably won't even remember for the next part of the day, it's very important to read books that you like, you feel inspired by, or even just storybooks that you love to listen to the stories and just remember the characters. Do that. The more colorful your writing is,
Mm-hmm.
the better people will take notice of you. So do that, and I'm sure you will be absolutely great. Don't worry about accent. Accent is the least of your botheration here. I know a lot of people, and I've had this question as an IELTS trainer, that people say, Can you tell me how to learn a US accent?" You don't have to. You just have to be authentic to yourself and
Right.
be confident in what you already know. Just build on that.
And when you're writing, it's the quality that matters over the quantity, as you mentioned. Like instead of a lot of words, make it look better. Great. So, and another question I had was amongst your current students, are they all from English background or are they coming from STEM, finance, law,
Yes.
or any other backgrounds as well?
I have students currently in my both of my classes. I have got students from criminal justice, accounting, maths, computer science. I think psychology. So I have got students. So my college is a sports college. So most of my kids, they are also from the sports background, jocks, and they work in basketball and soccer. I mean, they do all of those stuff as well, and they have English as their main subject. I mean, they have English which they cannot let go of. They have to be present in my class. So different students, and I also must say, your good English is also going to catapult you into proper writing techniques in all the papers that you write. It's not just you're writing good stuff in English. I know a lot of my kids have come up to me and said, "Hey, you know what? the structure that you taught us in the classroom about the introduction, body, the mind mapping before you start to write, you put the points down. These things have helped me make my accounting essays much better, or they have made my criminal justice essays much better. So I know that it is learning English and writing is a skill that is going to take you to far places. You will not be stuck because it will kind of permeate through your conversations. It will permeate through your writing skills in every presentation that you make, be it in math, be it in your workplace, be it in any essay that you write.
That must be a great joy when you hear that, right? That they are using the skills in their majors and getting success there.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest pleasure of being a teacher is when you see your students, even if they are very resistant at first, right? Because I come from a different background. They know that I come from India with a different accent. So, but still, the fact that they pick up this tiny details, it's not just about memorizing, it's not just about reading tons of books. And, like in India, we have this tendency of constantly reading. And vomiting that out. I mean, that's what we used to say. Like you memorize and then you just put it out on paper. It's not just always about that. It's about nitpicking the information and remembering them at the end of the class. So the awareness is very important.
Okay, it's good to know. So since just we are about to end, so before that, one last question: what are your plans for the next few years? And do you have any hobbies as such? Do faculties get the time for hobbies?
Yes, I have a lot of hobbies. One of the biggest hobbies that I have is I enjoy cooking. Thankfully, America has taught me how to be very self-sufficient, do everything on my own. Cooking has been one of my biggest therapies, I must say, where I end up cooking a lot, not just for myself, but for my friends and family here. And I read and I watch a lot of recent current content that is there on TV, which includes movies, which includes listening to a lot of good music. And of course, that helps me in my classrooms as well. So, yeah.
Right. And what are your plans in the next few years?
Yes, that question I missed. I am still applying for many other jobs. Also, since I have a background in industry where I work as a language analyst and I'm very passionate about it, I hope I'm also applying for jobs currently where I would be in the data science background. I mean, with the data science work again. I'm getting calls. Here's fingers crossed that I get through somewhere. At the same time, I'm applying to different colleges also so that I can pick up more teaching jobs till the time I be a full time. Because adjunct faculties, you start off and then eventually they move you to full time.
Like a tenure track faculty.
I can, but I have to wait a little bit more because I just started. So it will be around a year or two before I start applying for full time. But you never know.
Yeah.
So let's being positive.
And all the very best. I'm pretty sure you'll do great. I mean, you're inspiring others, so I don't think you need inspirations, but definitely I'm confident that you're going to do great in life. So, yeah, I mean, thank you very much for taking your time today in your busy schedule. I mean, loved speaking with you. And hopefully, students and also prospective faculties will get inspiration from you and they'll reach out to you for any further questions.
Be happy to help.
Any concluding comments before we end?
So, my concluding comment for all the people who are listening to this podcast would be feel free to be very confident. Like, whatever you are, that makes you who you are. That's unique to you. Hold on to it and never doubt yourself too much where you do not go out into the world. I think that's one thing that I taught myself is never to be too shy. What you have it all. So just go ahead and focus on just being the best version of you.
Great. Thank you so much for your time today. And it was lovely speaking with you. Looking forward to speaking with you in the future in another episode and getting to know more about your job hunting process in what you're going through right now.
Yes, absolutely.
Cool. Thank you so much again for your time.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in. Got questions or suggestions? Drop me an email at debruponair@gmail.com. Catch you in the next episode. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.